So if we take a look at our post request, we have a app.post for /todos, and this is typically where our new to-do item form posts to. So it's going to send information from this new.ejs file. Let me change the highlighting here. And it sends it to /todos as a post request, and then it bundles up the value from this input inside of an object on the rec.body object called to-do with a key of text, and that has the value for whatever the user inputs into the form here before they press create item. So normally we get that data, we use Mongoose to create a new to-do item in the database, and as long as there's no error, we redirect them back to /todos, which is the page that we were just on, the index page. In this case, what we'll do is the same thing as we did before. We'll say if rec.xhr, and again, this is just saying, hey, if this request was sent via AJAX, then we want to respond with whatever's inside of this if statement here. Otherwise, we'll just redirect back to to-dos. So I'll move that up, and we'll move this over, get rid of that. And now inside of here, this is where we'll do a res.json, and we'll send back the new to-do. And so what we can do is take that new to-do item and append it to the DOM. Now we're going to do all that later in a later video, but for now I just want to show you what it looks like when we send that request, how we send that request, how we hijack the form with AJAX, and we send it to the server, and then we get back the response, and at that point we can use that data to create some more markup, some new markup, fill in the data from the request, from the response, and put it on the page. So we'll save this and go back over to our ajax.javascript. We don't need this anymore, so I will get rid of the debugger, console.log, the data, and I'll just comment this whole thing out for now. That way it's not getting in our way. And we'll do a new one, $.post. Now post is actually going to take a couple of arguments. The first one is going to be the URL that we're posting to, just like the URL that we were getting from in the above method here. And then the second argument is going to be the data. So this is the data from the form. We're going to pass this data in, and then we're going to get a response back, and in the response we're going to handle that with a callback. So we pass in this anonymous function or callback, and yet again, you know, we can just call it data, or we can get more specific and we call it something like new to-do item. So the URL is again going to be /todos, and then the data, we don't have any data yet. In fact, we don't want to send a post request until our user clicks the submit button on the form. So we actually need to go look at let's see here, the new EJS. Because our form is on a separate page, this makes things a little bit difficult, but it's totally fine. We can get it working now, and then later obviously we're going to refactor it to where the form is on the same page as the index where all the to-do items are listed. But for now it's okay just for the example. So what we want to do is set a listener on this form where when it gets submitted, or when this button gets clicked, either one, we hijack that request. So we don't want it to do its typical request where it sends the post request and then it redirects and refreshes, etc. We just want to stop it, and then we want to send our own AJAX request. So I'm going to set a listener on the form. So we'll do a, let's see here, inside of here we can do something like $, and this is the jQuery selector, what I like to call wrapping it in cache, and we'll pass in the form selector. So we use CSS selectors with jQuery to select various items on the DOM. And now we can do an on, let's see here, a .submit, and then a function, and this function is going to have an event, or oftentimes this is called E for short. And so we'll do an E dot prevent default, if I can spell it correctly. Okay, so what this means is normally when you submit a form, you're submitting all the data to the back end, and then it's going to do whatever it does on the back end. It'll probably, create something in the database, and then it'll render or redirect you to another route that will then render a view. So we don't want that to happen. We just want to stop it right there, and this is what I like to call hijacking the form. So we're preventing the default behavior of the event. So when we submit the form, the event is to submit, and we are going to prevent the default behavior of that. So now that we've done that, we can come in here and send this post request. So I'm going to move it up, and we can throw some semicolons on here. Okay, put a little space in here, and all right, so what we need is some data. So I will throw the debugger on here, and we will see what happens when we submit this form. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause or resume the script here, and then we will go to new item, and we'll enter some stuff in here. So we'll just say hello world, and when we click create item, if everything's working correctly, it will open up the debugger, and now we're here at the debugger inside of this form.submit. Okay, so what we want to do is figure out the what data is inside of that input. So we can take a look at this. In this case, this is referencing what was submitted, and what was submitted is the form. So if we look at $this, we can see the form selector. So this dot, let's see here, I believe it is serialize, and that's a function. And so what that did is it just serialized the data. So it took the data that was inside of the to-do item, and so here's the key to do text, and then the value is hello world. So if we go back and take a look at our new.ejs, we have to do text here, which is what's going to be put on rec.body on the server side, and then the value for this, of course, is whatever the user inputted. In this case, it's hello world. So this has been turned into a string, and now it can be submitted to the backend where it'll be used to input to the database. So what we want to do is go back over here to our AJAX, and the data will be $this dot serialize. Now I don't typically like to pass in the selector like this, so what I'll do is I'll say var, and we'll say form data is equal to this dot serialize. So here we'll pass in the form data, and then now we will take the debugger and place it inside of here. So whenever this data gets submitted to the back end, it'll get sent back to us. When it gets sent back, we will freeze the code right here and take a look at it. So just to look at the whole cycle here, we submit the form, we have a listener that detects when the form has been submitted, we hijack that submission, we prevent the default behavior, we pull the data from the form, and then we post it to the database using $.post, which is a shortcut method for AJAX post request. And then in our routes, we have our app.post, where we take the rec.body.todo.text, we sanitize it. This means that we're making sure that there's no script injection here, and then we take that form data and we pass it into todo.create. Then as long as there's no errors, we check and see if it is a AJAX request, and if it is, we'll send back JSON. So here we're going to go ahead and just let this one run through. Nothing's going to happen. It just throws an error, doesn't know what data is. That's fine. We will clear that out, refresh the page, and now we'll actually send a hello world here. We'll click create item, and now if we take a look at data, you can see that there's a new ID for this object that got sent back to us, and the text for that object is hello world. So hello world did in fact get sent to the database, or to the server, where it was stored in the database, and then that object was sent back to us. So you can see here where we pull the data, we send it to the database, and then once we get that object back from the database, we send it as JSON back to the front end. So that's where we are now. And if we had our app structured in such a way that we could append this to the DOM, we would, but the problem is we're on the new page right now. So that's why we want to get rid of the new page, put this form on the index page. Then when we get back that response, we can append that information to the DOM. In this case, nothing happens. We can go ahead and just let it finish out. And if we go back to home, you'll actually see there's hello world. So we know that it did get added, but we need to do quite a bit more to actually get it to behave like the app that we saw in the last video. So for now, you have an introduction to the get method and the post method. So these are the two AJAX methods that are used most commonly, and then of course we have to use put and delete, but we'll cover those in another video. So that's it for now, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.